Hello everyone, this is Joshua Smith of Apollo's Artifacts. Today I'm going to spin through a number of articles that show why the funny, friendly little face here of Bill Gates is not so funny nor friendly. This man does not have your best interests in mind. In fact, he probably wants you dead. First thing we're going to look at is his relationship with one Jeffrey Epstein, a story that has of course completely disappeared now that the pandemic is fully in place. From The Verge, Bill Gates had a closer relationship with Jeffrey Epstein than he admitted. New York Times reports. Epstein was involved with Gates personally and with his namesake foundation. This is in reference, of course, to Bill Gates claiming that he had no close personal relationship with Epstein and didn't know really anything about him and had no financial ties to him whatsoever. All lies. The article begins here. Bill Gates, co-founder of Microsoft and chairman of its board until 2014, was among the powerful men who spent a meaningful amount of time with the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Employees of Gates' namesake foundation reportedly also met with Epstein in multiple visits to the disgraced financier's mansion. Previously, Gates had falsely told the Wall Street Journal that he did not have a business relationship or friendship with Epstein. I met him, he told them. I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him. I didn't go to New Mexico or Florida or Palm Beach or any of that. In the New York Times article, a spokeswoman for Gates declined to say how many times the pair had met. The paper's reporting shows that Gates met with Epstein, quote, numerous times, including at least 3 times at Epstein's townhouse. Quote, his lifestyle is very different and kind of intriguing, although it would not work for me, Gates wrote. Moving down a bit here, in 2011, Gates instructed a team to meet Epstein at his townhouse to discuss philanthropic fundraising, the New York Times reports. Epstein told the people there that his conviction for soliciting prostitution from an underage girl was no worse than stealing a bagel. The two, meaning Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein, remained in contact, and at one point in 2013, Gates flew on Epstein's jet from New Jersey to Palm Beach, Florida, according to a flight manifest. It says here, though the relationship between Gates and Epstein apparently, I would say supposedly, cooled off after 2014, the Gates Foundation, however, remained in contact with Epstein through 2017. Here I move now to the New York Times article itself. Bill Gates met with Jeffrey Epstein many times despite his past. And here you see a nice little photo with Epstein posed in the middle as sort of the grand orchestrator of all the rest of these rich and powerful people. From there I move to a very disturbing article in Business Insider. Bill Gates, who said he had no relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, reportedly met with a disgraced financier multiple times, including a 2011 meeting with billionaire Ava Dubin and her teenage daughter. So let's speculate about what was going on in this meeting as we go through this article. And as it details here, which is drawn from the New York Times reporting, quote, in an email obtained by the Times that Gates sent to colleagues after he met Epstein face-to-face for the first time, he noted that, quote, a very attractive Swedish woman and her daughter, who was 15 at the time, by the way, dropped by and I ended up staying there quite late. Is that sort of like yada, yada, yada over the most important part? So I move down a bit here in the article to where it begins this interesting aspect. During that first meeting on the Upper East Side in 2011, the two wealthy men were joined by Dr. Ava Anderson Dubin and her 15-year-old daughter. Dubin, who once dated Epstein, and her billionaire hedge fund manager husband, Glenn Dubin, maintained close social, financial, and philanthropic ties with Epstein, including after he went to jail. 6 sources told Business Insider that Epstein was a godfather to their oldest daughter, which the family denies. But we know how giving Epstein was of things that happened to fall into his orbit. One wonders if he gifted something to Bill Gates during this meeting that went on, according to Gates himself, quite late. And here is a record of the emails that took place from each person after that meeting. emphasis on what Bill Gates has to say here. You can work out the rest on your own. Through a separate investigation, too, it also came out that Bill Gates had made donations to MIT through Jeffrey Epstein. And the final part down here is probably the most comical one of all. It says, quote, "Over time, Gates and his team realized Epstein's capabilities and ideas were not legitimate, and all contact with Epstein was discontinued." Oh, you mean once he got caught, that is, and had too much of the limelight on him. And then we have an article from Vox.com. Headline, "A new MIT report on Jeffrey Epstein raises questions about how much to blame billionaires like Bill Gates." And it begins here, "For months, tech billionaires have been on the ropes over the ties they maintained with money manager Jeffrey Epstein well after he was indicted and registered as a sex offender in 2008. Many of those connections centered around MIT's Media Lab, an institution popular in Silicon Valley and that had a concealed fundraising relationship with Epstein." Here's yet another article from The Observer. Microsoft founder Bill Gates now has his own Jeffrey Epstein problem. And when we come down to the bottom of the article here, it says, "It makes sense why Epstein needed Bill Gates. It makes far less sense why Bill Gates needed Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender with other known serious character flaws." A very nice way of describing someone accused credibly of serial pedophilia. Gates has yet to adequately account for this relationship, and if more details trickle out that also conflict with his version of events, his dissimulating will be increasingly suspicious. Well, perhaps it's the delectable treats that Epstein could provide Gates. Just a possibility, right? So let's find out what other interesting connections Bill Gates might have with CP issues.
Charged with having and trading a massive amount of child pornography. KIRO 7's Gary Horker is live near the Gates compound in Medina. And Gary, this man worked as an engineer for the family.
That's what SPD intelligence found out, Steve. They found out that the man actually worked for the Bill and Melinda Gates mansion on the grounds of their sprawling 66,000 square foot estate, and that's where they found him and questioned him last March. The estate is behind us, right on the lakefront here, but this is a few blocks away, and it's as close as their security will allow us to get. But according to King County prosecutors, 51-year-old Rick Allen Jones was questioned by detectives about images of child porn and even child rape that were sent from Jones's home computer. Now, none of this alleged crime actually happened at the Gates mansion, but it was here that Rick Allen Jones admitted to detectives he collected child porn for about 10 years, sending images through his Gmail account. Now, while Jones was talking to detectives at the Gates estate, 3 more SPD detectives had a search warrant to search Jones's Ballard apartment. There, they say they found more than 6,000 images of graphic child porn and rape, 133 of which were children identified by police. We tried Jones's apartment for comment. We got no response. We also reached out to Bill and Melinda Gates' foundation, and we did not hear back. So, in fact, we do not know if he's been fired by the Gates' family. Another mystery into this is why Jones was never jailed or charged by these allegations up until now. The investigation started here at the Gates Foundation, the Gates Mansion, in March, and the criminal complaint, which I have right here.
The article begins here. Police arrested a Seattle man at Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Mansion for allegedly collecting more than 6,000 child blank photos. I cannot say that word. Rick Allen Jones, reportedly employed as an engineer at the Gates home, is also accused of trading CP images via Gmail. He's charged with possession of CP. 51-year-old has been, quote, collecting CP for a decade. News down a bit further where it says that they found more than 6,000 images of graphic CP and, another word I can't say, 133 of which were children identified by police. And sadly, disgustingly, pathetically, the individual at that time was not even jailed, merely ordered to stay away from all children, because orders like that really work on people like that. Then we move forward in time a bit here. Gates employees sentenced for CP collection. Seattle man admits to possessing horrendous videos, sentenced to only 90 days in jail. It begins here. A Seattle man previously employed as an engineer at Bill and Melinda Gates' home was caught with a 6,000 image CP collection, but will not see prison time for the offense. Charged in late December, Rick Allen Jones admitted he had been collecting these horrendous videos and photos for a decade before he was finally caught. This, of course, places Bill Gates in association with not one but two people involved in the same circuit of hellacious problems. What other interesting relationships does Bill Gates have beyond these? We move to this one. Headline: Microsoft partners with performance artist Marina Abramovich, who is actually a New Age witch who engages in spirit cooking and Satanism. This is, of course, the lady who became famous during the whole Pizzagate situation, who created so-called artwork out of the usual combination that you find in satanic practices of urine and semen and feces and blood. The elite love to promote this woman, and Microsoft is no different. They love to promote her insanity as well. And as we scroll down a bit more, we can see her in her infamous garb of her favorite ways to perform. Nothing occult or unusual about this at all. Here we have an example of her spirit cooking episode. How a moron like this becomes world famous and wealthy is beyond me. And finally, after there was a public outcry, Microsoft deleted Maria Abramovich's HoloLens 2 ad, but they say here that it's only right-wing internet users who said that it had something to do with Satanism, rather than the plainly disturbing things that you can see in the videos of her and the photos. Here we can see her side by side with her artwork in various types of display. And here we can watch a bit more of her spirit cooking. And that, my friends, is what passes for brilliant art in our modern times. But let's see what Bill Gates' real personal obsession is related to population control. Despite Bill Gates' many claims that he wants to save lives with vaccines, we can see from his own public comments that he doesn't really have that kind of an interest. His interest is actually in lowering human population. Here he says that it would be good to kill Granny in order to hire 10 teachers. Now, of course, anyone looking at the education system today would say, no, we need to keep Granny because Granny actually has lessons everybody needs to learn, and those 10 teachers, maybe not so much so.
That's a trade-off society is making because of very, very high medical costs and a lack of willingness to say, is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion. So
notice how all the cutesy little lefties in there give a laugh there, that this idea of a death panel is so tee-hee-hee hilarious.
Of course,
well, that's an interesting thing you just said, which is just the last 3 months in life for one person or something, because we haven't had a discussion of how to allocate that money. It means we lay off 3 teachers to do so. I mean, in other words, we haven't had this type of allocation.
We're making that trade-off because of huge medical costs that are not examined to see which ones actually have no benefit whatsoever. And because of pension generosity, we will be laying off over 100,000 teachers, which, I'm very much against that.
So let's move from Bill Gates to another elite billionaire who has similar ideas and obsessions about overpopulation and population control. What did Ted Turner have to say?
To stabilize the population. When I was born, there were
what's wrong with the population? I mean,
with too many people. That's why we have global warming. We have global warming because too many people are using too much stuff. But if there were less people, they'd be using less stuff. We're altering the climate and the world in so many different ways. And what we're doing is reducing the Earth's carrying capacity so that each year the natural world gets poorer and less able to support the increasing number of people. We have a finite world, but an infinite ability to increase our population. We've got to stabilize population on a voluntary basis. Everybody in the world's got to pledge to themselves that 1 or 2 children is it.
Right.
And we've got to do that because otherwise all the gains that we make in redoing our energy system are going to be erased by population increase.
Notice there how he mentioned the concept of carrying capacity. All of this stuff goes back to one Reverend Thomas Malthus. Malthus likewise was obsessed with population control and overpopulation, and Malthus, of course, also drew the interest of Charles Darwin. And we can move down here just in this simplistic outline about Malthus where it says that there are 2 types of checks that can hold population within resource limits. That would be the carrying capacity of the Earth comment that Ted Turner made. Positive checks, which would be things that increase the death rate. And what sorts of things are those? Hunger, disease, and war. Then we also have birth control. And of course, Bill Gates' father sat on the board of Planned Parenthood. And one of the things they usually don't tell you about Bill Gates' father is that he was a very wealthy corporate lawyer. Actually helped Gates in his negotiations with IBM. Let's look at the words of another elitist who was obsessed also with overpopulation and population control. Here we have the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Phillip, who said, quote, "If I were reincarnated, I would wish to be returned to Earth as a killer virus to lower human population levels." And I think that about sums it up there. If you think this guy here is working for the good of humanity, that he's working on your side, you are sorely, sorely mistaken. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.